He didn't feel sick. He just stopped wanting things. For years, he was useful, kind, quiet, and completely erased. Then one day, the silence inside him stopped sounding safe. They always come to me with numbers. Blood pressure's stable. Sugar's under control. EKG looks good, Doc. And I nod, because the chart says they're fine. But then I look them in the eyes, and I see something that never shows up on paper. They're alive, yes, but there's no life left in them. It doesn't happen overnight. It starts small. You stop speaking your mind to avoid conflict. You downplay what you want because you think it's too late. You let people talk over you and convince yourself it's not worth the energy to push back. One compromise here, one silence there, and before you realize it, something inside you goes cold. No one notices. That's the worst part. You still show up to work. You still buy groceries. You smile in photos. You answer, "I'm fine." But deep down, you feel like an echo of someone you used to be. This thing I'm talking about, it's not dramatic. It doesn't scream. It doesn't demand attention. It just slowly drains the color out of your soul until everything becomes gray and tolerable. Not painful, just numb. Somewhere around 50, people stop asking themselves what they want. Not because they don't care, but because they've been trained to believe they're too old to matter, too old to change, too old to want more. So they settle, not because they're weak, but because they're exhausted. Most people don't die from disease. They die from the weight of years spent being someone they're not, from all the swallowed words, from all the fake smiles, from all the moments they needed to say, "That's enough," and didn't. They die with clean blood work and silent regret. I know this because I've been there. There was a time I was the guy everyone leaned on. I gave advice, fixed things, smiled through it all. But inside, I was fading. I couldn't remember the last time I made a decision that was really mine. I had become a collection of reactions, not a person, not a man, just a shadow, trying to be what the world expected. And no one told me I was disappearing. They praised me for being reliable, humble, strong, and every compliment felt like another shovel of dirt on my real self, buried deep under roles I never chose. This is what kills people, not in hospitals, but in their living rooms, in their quiet evenings, in the moments when no one's watching. It's the slow death of self-worth. And it's terrifying because it wears a mask. You tell yourself you're just being mature, responsible, logical. You say you're past that phase, but what you really are is disconnected, numb, tired of pretending. And here's the cruel part. The longer it lasts, the less you remember who you were before it began. The mask becomes your face, but it gets even darker. In part 2, I'll tell you what no one warns you about. The exact moment people unknowingly agree to disappear, and why, after 50, most never come back from it. You don't even notice when it happens. There's no warning, no line you step over. One day, you just stop correcting people when they get you wrong. You stay quiet when they put words in your mouth. You laugh along when something feels wrong in your gut. And you tell yourself, it's not worth it. But something inside you disagrees. That's the first crack. It often starts with something small. You get interrupted, and instead of finishing your thought, you back off. Not out of respect, out of trained silence. You give up the right to take up space, and it feels polite until it becomes permanent. Every time you silence yourself to protect someone else's comfort, you erase a piece of who you are. It's not peace, it's suppression. And you know it, even if you pretend you don't. Eventually, you stop asking for things. You stop expecting respect. You downplay your desires like they're luxuries you can't afford. You shrink to fit a life that doesn't feel like yours. But you tell yourself it's just the way things are now. People over 50 do this all the time. They give up not because they've failed, but because they're tired of fighting for crumbs. They think peace means silence. They think strength means swallowing pain. They confuse endurance with wisdom, and they slowly disappear in their own homes, in their own marriages, in their own skin. That's the moment I watch for, when someone speaks about their life like it's a job they clock in and out of. No light in their eyes, no heat in their voice, just quiet resignation. They say things like, "It's too late for me," or "It is what it is," or "At my age, what can you do?" That's not acceptance. That's grief with good manners. Let me be clear. You don't have to scream to exist. But if you've been silent for so long that your own thoughts feel foreign, you're not at peace. You're numb. And numb is not the goal. Numb is not healing. Numb is slow death. You don't need to be loud. You need to be real. People won't always like it. Some will be shocked. Others will call you difficult. That's fine. That's how you know you're waking up. If no one ever gets uncomfortable around you, it means you've been performing for too long. Somewhere along the line, you made a silent agreement. I'll keep you happy if you leave me alone. But that deal cost you your truth, your fire, your sense of self. Want to know what makes people old before their time? It's not years. It's the weight of everything they didn't say. In Part 3, we go even deeper, to the one illusion people over 50 still chase, hoping it will save them. But it's that very illusion that keeps them stuck, small, and silent. Once you see it, you won't unsee it, and you'll understand why it's the most dangerous lie of all. If this story spoke to something deep inside you, you're not alone. Subscribe for more quiet truths like this one, and tell me in the comments, have you ever felt like something was silently killing your spirit long before your body ever gave in? There's one illusion that keeps people stuck longer than pain ever could, the belief that being needed is the same as being loved. That lie has broken more souls than rejection ever did, and people over 50, they cling to it like a life raft. Because when you don't feel wanted for who you are, being useful becomes the next best thing. So you take on the chores no one sees. You solve problems no one thanks you for. You become the one who always shows up, always fixes, always listens, even when no one asks how you're doing. They call it strength, responsibility, reliability. But behind closed doors, it's something much quieter. If I stay useful, they won't forget me. And that's the trap. It feels noble, generous, selfless. But deep down, it's desperation in disguise. When your entire worth depends on what you do for others, the moment you stop, you feel like you disappear. That's why so many people panic when their kids grow up. Why retirement feels like death, not freedom. Why silence in the house sounds like a verdict, not peace. No one talks about this, but I will. Being needed feels good, until it becomes your only identity. Then it becomes a cage. People don't want to feel invisible, so they make themselves indispensable. And at first, it works. You get calls, you get visits, you feel important. But over time, something shifts. You start doing more than you want to, saying yes when you mean no, smiling through requests that drain you dry. And somewhere along the line, your giving turns into bargaining, not for money, not for praise, for presence, for connection, for a seat at the table. You give your energy, your time, your peace, hoping someone notices how quietly you're disappearing. But they don't, because you train them not to. That's the cruel part. The more you do for others, the less they ask who you are without the doing. Eventually, you stop recognizing yourself too. You don't remember what you like, what you want, what you need. You only remember what they need. And when that usefulness runs out or gets taken for granted, you're left with a terrifying question. Who am I when no one needs anything from me? That silence can break a person, because it's in that silence you realize you were never loved for who you are. You were loved for what you gave, what you fixed, what you tolerated, and now it's too quiet to pretend otherwise. But here's the truth they don't teach. If being useful is your only way to feel worthy, then love has become labor, and no amount of giving will fill that hole. It doesn't happen with a scream. More often, it begins with something small, a dish left in the sink, a birthday forgotten, a message left on read. Nothing explosive, just one more thing added to the pile. But this time, something inside doesn't swallow it. Something shifts. You don't explode. You don't yell. You don't even raise your voice. But you feel it. The silence that used to feel like survival now tastes like betrayal. All those years you kept your thoughts to yourself. You thought it made you strong. Turns out it just made you invisible. That quiet obedience they praised you for, it was never respect. It was convenience. You realized the peace you've been protecting was never peace. It was permission for others to step over you without guilt. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. That's when the anger comes, not the loud, wild kind. No, it's quiet, focused, clean. It doesn't scream. It sees. It doesn't hurt others. It finally tells the truth. This anger doesn't want revenge. It wants clarity. It shows you every moment you said, "I'm fine," when you weren't. Every time you excused someone's carelessness just to keep the connection. Every birthday you made special for someone who forgot yours. You see it all. And for the first time, it hurts in the right place. Because this isn't the pain of being abandoned. It's the pain of abandoning yourself over and over again for the illusion of harmony. People often ask, how do I find myself again after 50? My answer's simple. Stop apologizing for being angry. It's not the anger that's dangerous. It's the silence that came before it. That silence taught you to betray your boundaries, to explain away neglect, to serve where you weren't valued. But this anger, this beautiful burning clarity, is the moment your real self finally fights back. It's not rage, it's resurrection. And it doesn't always look like a dramatic confrontation. Sometimes it's just stopping. You stop chasing, stop fixing, stop performing. You let people wonder what's changed. You let them feel the absence of your overgiving. And when they finally ask what's wrong, you don't soften it. You tell them, not to hurt them, not to guilt them, but to finally stand next to the one person you left behind, trying to please them. You. Because there comes a time, if you're lucky, when your silence breaks, not into chaos, but into truth. And that truth doesn't always fix the relationship, but it will always fix you. It's strange how quiet it is once you stop needing to be understood. All those years you explained yourself, softened your tone, waited for someone to say, "You're right, you matter, I see you." You bent backwards trying to make your pain palatable, just enough to be heard, but not enough to make anyone uncomfortable. Until one day, you just don't. You don't explain why you're not answering that message. You don't give reasons for leaving the table. You don't list out the 10 things that hurt you. You simply remove yourself from the conversations, the dynamics, the patterns that never saw you as a person, only as a resource. And it doesn't feel loud. It feels clean. That's the shift, not into bitterness, but into clarity. This isn't rebellion. It's return. You begin to remember who you were before the world convinced you to shrink. And when you look in the mirror now, you don't see someone who's difficult or too much. You see someone who survived their own silence, who stopped asking for permission to exist. You start saying no, not because you're angry, but because you're awake. You stop chasing apologies that never come. You stop editing your truth to protect other people's comfort. You stop treating other people's attention like oxygen. Because here's the hardest truth of all. You don't need to be needed. You need to be true. And when that truth settles into your bones, something beautiful happens. You walk into rooms differently. You speak slower, not because you doubt yourself, but because you're no longer rushing to prove your value. You don't try to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. You let go of the need to be liked, not out of arrogance, but out of self-respect. And you stop explaining your worth like it's negotiable. For the first time in years, your boundaries aren't a threat. They're a home. You come back to yourself, not with fireworks, but with stillness. You sit with your own company, and it doesn't feel lonely. It feels honest. That's the part no one tells you. The peace you were begging for from others was always waiting in your own silence. But the real kind, the grounded kind, not the silence of suppression, the silence of knowing who you are with or without applause. You stop managing everyone else's comfort. You stop begging to be chosen. You start choosing yourself, not as a last resort, but as the default. And when people notice something's different, they ask, "Are you okay?" You are, but you're no longer available for the version of yourself that lived to make them okay. This new chapter, it's not louder. It's just yours. There's a point in life when you stop counting what left and start noticing what stayed. Not the titles, not the admiration, not the noise. What stays is quieter, sharper, real. You sit in your own living room with no one to impress and no one to protect. No performance, no mask, just you. And what you can finally admit now that no one's asking you to be polite about it. You were tired for years, not from effort, but from pretending, from tolerating what hurt, from hiding what mattered, from excusing what never deserved excuses. Now, that weight is gone, not because they changed, but because you stopped carrying them on your back like it was your job. And the absence they leave, it's not emptiness, it's space. Room for truth, room for breath, room for your own voice, the one you drowned to be liked, to be accepted, to be easy to love. You're not desperate anymore, not for attention, not for explanations, not for validation. You've buried the part of yourself that begged, and what rose up in its place isn't harder. It's clearer. You forgive differently now, not to fix things, but to unchain yourself. You love differently now, not to be chosen, but to remain whole whether you are or not. You're no longer interested in pleasing people who only loved the version of you that bled quietly. You see yourself as you are, not as they needed you to be. And when someone shows up now, you don't rush to fit into their story. You invite them to meet you where you actually are. If they can't, that's fine. You don't chase anymore, not out of pride, but out of peace. You've made a home in your own presence, and it doesn't feel like a prison. It feels like freedom. They may never notice what you survived, what you rebuilt, what it cost you to finally say, enough. But you notice, and that's enough. Because the real turning point in life isn't the one where everything changes outside. It's the one where you stop betraying yourself inside. And when you reach that place, that final, unshakable quiet, there's no applause, no audience, just you, sitting in your own skin and no longer trying to escape it. That's not loneliness. That's return. And the person you came back to, she was worth it. Always was.